You ever notice how the people who care the most always seem to get hurt the worst? You're sitting there at dinner with friends, and someone makes a comment about how you handled something. They don't even look at you when they say it, just throw it out there like it's nothing. But you feel it, immediately. That tightness in your chest, that heat creeping up your neck, that split second where you think, did they really just say that about me? And here's what happens next. While everyone else laughs or moves on to the next topic, you're stuck. You're running through every possible meaning of what they said, wondering if it was an attack, wondering if you should address it, wondering if maybe you're just being too sensitive. And the worst part? You care. You care what they think. You care how they see you. You care so much that you'll spend the next 3 hours, maybe the next 3 days, replaying that moment in your head, trying to figure out what you did wrong, how you could have responded better, whether you should text them later to clarify things. Meanwhile, the person who said it, they forgot about it 10 seconds later. They're not lying awake at night. They're not questioning themselves. They're not carrying this weight. You are. And this happens over and over. At work when your boss gives you that look. In your relationship when your partner makes that sigh. With your family when they make those comments about your choices. You feel everything. You absorb everything. You carry everyone else's emotions like they're your own. And you've been told this is good. You've been told that empathy is a strength, that caring deeply makes you a better person, that being sensitive means you're evolved. But let me ask you something. If empathy is such a strength, why does it feel like a weakness? Why are you the one losing sleep? Why are you the one constantly adjusting yourself to make others comfortable? Why are you the one who feels small while they feel powerful? If you know exactly what I'm talking about, if you're tired of caring more than everyone, else if you're exhausted from feeling everything while others seem to feel nothing, then stay with me, because today I'm going to show you why empathy isn't the virtue you've been told it is, and more importantly, how the most powerful people in the world have weaponized your caring against you. Let me take you back for a second. Niccolo Machiavelli didn't write The Prince as a love letter to humanity. He wrote it as a manual for survival in a world where nice guys didn't just finish last, they finished dead. And one of his most controversial observations was this: the prince who concerns himself too much with being loved will inevitably be destroyed by those who have no such concern. Think about that. The person who cares about being liked is always at the mercy of the person who doesn't. Robert Greene echoed this centuries later in the 48 Laws of Power when he laid out Law 20, do not commit to anyone. The moment you commit emotionally, the moment you care, you create a vulnerability that others can exploit. And Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese military strategist, built his entire philosophy on the concept that the general who becomes emotionally invested in his soldiers' feelings will lose the war. He said, "Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys, but you must also be willing to sacrifice them when victory requires it." These weren't cruel men. They were realists. They understood something that modern society has spent decades trying to hide from you. Empathy in its uncontrolled form is not a superpower. It's a leash. And the people who don't have empathy, they're holding the other end. So let's talk about what's really happening here. You've been conditioned to believe that caring about others, feeling their pain, understanding their struggles makes you morally superior. And on the surface, sure, it sounds beautiful. But here's the problem. While you're busy feeling everyone else's emotions, absorbing their stress, taking on their burdens, they're moving forward, unburdened, free, powerful. You see it, everywhere. Your coworker who never seems stressed about team dynamics. They don't care if people like them. They say what needs to be said. They take credit for their work. They push back when pushed. And somehow, they keep getting promoted while you're still wondering why your sensitivity and collaboration aren't being rewarded. Or that friend who always seems to have the upper hand in every relationship. They're not losing sleep over misunderstandings. They're not texting paragraphs trying to explain themselves. They're not checking in constantly to make sure everything's okay. And Because they don't care as much, people chase them. People want their approval. People bend to accommodate them. Then there's the person in your family who just says whatever they want, never apologizes, never explains, never adjusts. And everyone else? Everyone else tiptoes around them. Everyone else makes excuses for them. Everyone else accommodates their moods. Why? Because they've mastered the most powerful position you can have in any relationship. They've made it clear that they will not be the one who cares more. And you're over here carrying the weight of every interaction, every tension, every unspoken expectation. You're the one who reaches out first. You're the one who apologizes even when you're not wrong. You're the one who bends and adjusts and accommodates. And every single time you do that, you hand over a piece of your power. Now, before we go deeper into this, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with yourself. How many times have you replayed a conversation in your head for hours, even days, wondering if you said the right thing, if you hurt someone's feelings, if they're mad at you now? How many nights have you lost sleep because you care so deeply about how others perceive you that you can't let go of one comment, one look, one moment of tension? If that's you, if you know exactly what I'm talking about, I need you to do something right now. Leave a comment below and just write, "I've been there." That's it. That's it. Need to explain the situation? You don't need to tell the whole story. Just write, "I've been there." Because here's what happens when you do that. You realize you're not alone. You realize there are hundreds, maybe thousands of people reading these comments thinking, "Me too, I thought it was just me." And suddenly this pain you've been carrying alone, this feeling that something is wrong with you, it starts to lose its grip. Because you see it's not a flaw in you. It's not weakness. It's simply that no one ever taught you how to handle this. So go ahead, write in the comments, "I've been there," and leave your mark. Because your comment might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to feel less alone. All right. So now that you understand the problem, let me show you the solution. And I'm warning you right now, this is going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to go against everything. You've been taught about being a good person. But if you can sit with this discomfort, if you can really absorb what I'm about to tell you, you'll never be controlled by your empathy again. The solution is not to become heartless. It's not about turning into a cold, emotionless robot who doesn't care about anything. That's not power, that's just damage. Real power is learning to control when and where you deploy your empathy. It's learning that caring is a choice, not a reflex. And it's learning that the people who seem to have no empathy, they're not actually lacking it. They're just not giving it away for free. Think about it like this. Empathy is currency, and right now you're walking around handing out $100 bills to everyone you meet, whether they deserve it or not, whether they'll ever give anything back or not. Meanwhile, the powerful people, they're keeping their empathy locked up. They're selective. They're strategic. They only invest it in places where it will actually return value. And because it's rare, because they don't just give it to everyone, when they do show empathy, it's meaningful, it's powerful, it creates loyalty. But when you give it to everyone all the time, it becomes worthless. People expect it. People take it for granted. And worse, people exploit it. Let me give you a practical example. You're in a meeting at work. Someone criticizes your idea in front of everyone. Your immediate instinct, because you're empathetic, is to consider their perspective. Maybe they have a point. Maybe I didn't think this through. Maybe I should have presented it differently. So you backtrack. You soften your position. You try to find common ground. You smile and say, "Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. Let me rethink this." And in that moment, you just lost. Not because your idea was bad, but because you cared more about preserving the relationship than standing your ground. Now let's replay that same scenario with controlled empathy. Someone criticizes your idea. You pause. You look at them calmly. You don't rush to defend yourself. And you don't rush to accommodate them either. You simply say, "Interesting perspective. I'll consider that." And then you move on. You don't engage in a debate. You don't try to win them over. You don't explain yourself. You just acknowledge and release what just happened. You showed them, that their opinion, while noted, does not control you. You showed them that you're not going to crumble under criticism. You showed them that your internal validation is stronger than their external judgment. And here's the kicker. 9 times out of 10, they'll respect you more for it. Because people don't actually respect those who care too much about their opinions. They respect those who remain unmoved by them. Now let's go deeper into the psychology of this. There's a concept in dark psychology called strategic detachment. It's the ability to engage with someone emotionally without actually becoming emotionally invested. It's the skill that master manipulators have. But here's the thing. You don't have to be a manipulator to use it. You just have to understand that your emotional energy is finite, and you get to decide where it goes. Strategic detachment means you can listen to someone's problems without taking on their problems. You can acknowledge someone's feelings without making their feelings your responsibility. You can care about someone without being controlled by that care. Think about therapists. Good therapists care deeply about their clients, but they don't go home and lose sleep over every client's pain. They've learned to hold space for emotions without absorbing them. That's strategic detachment. Or think about emergency room doctors. They care about saving lives, but if they emotionally attach to every patient who came through those doors, they'd burn out in a month. They've learned to care in the moment, then release it when the moment is over. You need to learn the same skill in your daily life. When someone tries to guilt you, you can acknowledge their feelings without changing your behavior. When someone criticizes you, you can hear their words without internalizing them. When someone is upset with you, you can recognize their emotion without making it your emergency to fix. Here's another layer to this. The reason empathetic people get exploited is because they have what psychologists call high emotional porosity. Meaning, other people's emotions seep into you like water through a sponge. Someone walks into the room in a bad mood, and suddenly you feel heavy. Someone gives you a look of disapproval, and suddenly you're questioning everything about yourself. Someone withdraws their affection, and suddenly you're scrambling to figure out what you did wrong. This is not sensitivity. This is vulnerability. And manipulative people can sense it a mile away. They know that if they withhold approval, you'll chase it. They know that if they act disappointed, you'll try to fix it. They know that if they go silent, you'll fill the silence with apologies and explanations. They're not more powerful than you. They're just less porous than you. They don't absorb your emotions, so they never lose their center. And because you do absorb their emotions, you're constantly off balance. The solution? You have to seal the pores. You have to create a boundary between where their emotions end and where yours begin. And that boundary is built with one simple phrase that you repeat to yourself over and over until it becomes automatic. Their emotions are not my responsibility. Say it again. Their emotions are not my responsibility. Not because you're cold, not because you don't care, but because you finally understand that you cannot carry the weight of everyone else's feelings and still have the strength to carry your own. Let me tell you about a technique I call the mirror test. This is something powerful. People do naturally, but empathetic people have to train themselves to do. When someone comes at you with emotion, anger, sadness, disappointment, guilt, before you react, before you absorb it, you pause and ask yourself one question. If they were treating themselves the way they're treating me, right now, would I respect them? Think about that. If your friend spoke to themselves the way they're speaking to you, would you think that was healthy? If your boss treated themselves with the same disrespect they're showing you, would you admire that? If your partner held themselves to the same standard they're holding you to, would that seem fair? Most of the time, the answer is no. And that right there is your signal. This isn't about you being a bad person. This is about them projecting their own unresolved issues onto you. And you don't have to accept that projection. You don't have to take on their internal chaos. You can hand it back with silence, with calmness, with a simple, "That's your perspective, not mine." Let's talk about the concept of emotional non-reaction, which is one of the most powerful tools you can develop. This isn't about suppressing your emotions. That's toxic, and it'll destroy you from the inside out. Emotional non-reaction is about choosing not to perform your emotions for others, because here's what most people don't realize. When you react emotionally to someone's provocation, you're giving them exactly what they want. You're showing them they have power over you. Think about a child throwing a tantrum. What happens if the parent freaks out and yells back? The tantrum gets worse. Why? Because the child got the reaction they wanted. Attention, control, proof that they can affect the parent's emotional state. But what happens if the parent stays calm, doesn't engage, just holds the boundary? The tantrum fizzles out because there's nothing to feed off of. The same principle applies to adults, except most adults are way better at hiding their tantrums behind sophisticated language and social games. When someone insults you, they're testing to see if they can rattle you. When someone guilt trips you, they're checking to see if they can control you. When someone disrespects you, they're trying to establish dominance. And every time you react, every time you defend yourself, every time you try to explain or justify or prove them wrong, you're confirming that their tactic worked. You're showing them the leash is still around your neck. But when you don't react, when you just look at them calmly, maybe even smile slightly, and say nothing, or say something neutral like, "Interesting take," and then move on, you've just shown them that, their emotional manipulation has no power here. And that is terrifying to a manipulator, because their whole strategy depends on your reaction. Now I need to address something important. Some of you are thinking, but doesn't this make me just like them? Doesn't this turn me into a cold, calculating person who doesn't care about anyone? No, and here's why. There's a huge difference between someone who lacks empathy and someone who controls their empathy. A person who lacks empathy genuinely doesn't understand or care about others' feelings. They're not strategic about it. They're just wired that way, whether through personality or trauma or neurology. But you have empathy. You feel deeply. You understand others. The difference is you're learning not to let that understanding become your prison. You're learning that you can understand someone's pain without fixing it. You can recognize someone's manipulation without falling for it. You can acknowledge someone's anger without absorbing it. That's not cruelty. That's boundaries. That's self-preservation. That's power. And honestly, it's more respectful to both you and them. Because when you stop trying to manage everyone else's emotions, you stop treating them like children who can't handle their own feelings. You start treating them like adults who are responsible for their own emotional regulation. And that, ironically, is the highest form of respect you can give someone. Here's your practical challenge for the next 7 days. And I want you to actually do this because it will change everything. For the next 7 days, every time someone tries to elicit an emotional reaction from you, whether it's guilt, defensiveness, anxiety, whatever, I want you to practice the 3-second pause. Before you respond, before you react, before you explain yourself, you pause. You take 3 full seconds, you breathe. And in those 3 seconds, you ask yourself, is this emotion mine, or are they trying to give it to me? If it's yours, feel it, process it, respond authentically. But if it's theirs, if they're trying to hand you their anger, their disappointment, their insecurity, you simply hand it back by not accepting it. You don't argue, you don't defend. You just calmly hold your ground. Day 1 is going to feel weird. You're going to want to jump in and fix and explain. Don't. Day 2 and 3, people might push harder because they're confused why their usual tactics aren't working. Stay the course. By day 4 and 5, you'll start noticing something incredible. The people who were always pushing your buttons, they start backing off, not because you fought them, but because you stopped being pushable. By day 6 and 7, you'll feel something you haven't felt in years. Space, internal space. The constant noise of other people's emotions that used to live in your head, it's quieter. And in that quiet, you'll remember who you actually are beneath all that caring and accommodating and adjusting. You'll remember that you are not responsible for everyone else's happiness. You'll remember that your worth is not determined by how much you can endure. You'll remember that the most powerful thing you can be is unmoved. Look, if you made it this far, it's because something in this video resonated with you on a level you can't ignore. And I know what you're feeling right now. That mix of relief because finally someone said the thing you've been thinking but were afraid to admit. And also that uncertainty, that voice asking, but can I really do this? Can I really stop caring so much without losing myself? Let me tell you something. You're not going to lose yourself. You're going to find yourself. The version of you that's been buried under everyone else's expectations, everyone else's needs, everyone else's emotions. That person is still in there, and they're exhausted. They're tired of being the one who always bends, who always adjusts, who always cares more. And they're ready to step forward if you'll let them. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to stop performing for everyone else. Here on this channel, every single week I bring you content like this. Real strategies pulled from dark psychology, Machiavellian philosophy, ancient wisdom, not the watered down. Feel good. Everyone's a winner version you get everywhere else, but the actual truth about how power works in human relationships. Not so you can hurt people, but so you can finally stop being hurt. Not so you can manipulate others, but so you can finally stop being manipulated. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming untouchable. And if that speaks to you, if you're done being the person everyone else leans on while you crumble inside, then subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that red button, turn on notifications because every video is another piece of the puzzle, another tool in your arsenal, another step toward the version of you that doesn't flinch. And if this video helped you, if you felt seen, if you felt understood, leave a like so the algorithm shows this to other people who need to hear it. People who are right now sitting in the same pain you've been sitting in, thinking they're alone. Your like helps them find this. We'll see you in the next video. And remember, you don't owe anyone your empathy. You owe yourself your power.